Good morning. Try again. I am going to try to record for you what you need in order to not be so stuck. I am really sorry I can't be there. I took a shower this morning. My head is still congested, but the nurse says no. So I am going to do my best. As Isaiah said in his Desmos, you need me. You can't learn it without me. That's very flattering. I don't believe it's true, but we're going to go with that. So I'm going to walk you through 2 different Jamboards and show you the things I think you need to know. It's not that difficult. The first video I'm going to do right now is the stuff of graphing the amplitude and the vertical translation. And that's what we started a week ago. And that's what the last 2 lessons have been about Monday on the Desmos. The Desmos was a little weird, only like 13 people in both classes. That was disappointing, but excuse me, you really do need to try to do this because this is the week and I'm going to do my best to give you what you need. So if you want to open your Jamboard, you can follow along with me. Okay. So hopefully you are seeing this Jamboard. I should probably have logged in. I'll watch it back later. Okay, so I'm on the Jamboard. So should you be. My recommendation for you is to start and stop the video as needed so that you can find out and try and make sure. If you don't have this written down in your journals, then you should pause the video and write this equation down and know the differences. But I am going to talk you through this right now. Okay. Every trig equation, if it starts out with you're supposed to graph, it'll either say sine or cosine. All the instructions and everything is the same. It's just whether you start at the 0 or the maximum point. So what's going to happen is the first thing you look at is going to be, you're going to have to realize that this coefficient, the number in front, that's going to tell you basically how tall it is, how far does it stretch above and below the midline. It's called the amplitude. And the A in front, the coefficient in front, tells us how much it stretches. It's called the amplitude. This B right here has been 1 so far. After this, I'm making a second video to teach you how the B does this. The B will, like a slinky, make this stretch out longer or shorter by making the period shorter than 2 pi or 360 or making it longer than 2 pi or 360. I will teach you how that works on the next video. The D you already know. The D is the number that moves the midline up or down. And we say Y equals D. We just say Y equals the D. That tells us where the whole graph rigidly moves up or down. I usually start with, when I graph, with the midline. Okay. Pause this anytime you need to catch up your journals. All right. Ooh, let's clear this and I will talk you through it. Okay. All right. So when you see a graph like this, there's a couple things you are going to do first. So the first thing I do is I try to say, where's the max and where's the min? And that's what the Desmos was kind of doing, is they said, look at where's the highest point, and they give you kind of this range thing. So there's the highest point, and then you look down here and you say, okay, well, there's the lowest point. So this is going to be your maximums, and this will be your minimum. And you kind of go, okay, well, where's the middle between those? So you kind of count them and go, well, this is at 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's right in between. And that middle is usually what I graph next. So I say, okay, here is the midline. because it cuts the max and the min in half right there. And so I would write, okay, well, that's at a 3 right there, right? So I would say the midline is at y equals 3. And I just look to see where it is on the y-axis, okay? All right. And then I say, well, it starts, it seems to start right here. You're always going to start at 0 because we're not doing any phase shifting this year. And then it goes max, here's your 0, here's your minimum. So you kind of identify those. Max, those are those 5 critical points. The zeros, listen to me, kids, write this down. The zeros of this pattern, the zeros are always on the midline. That's why I find the midline first. So the fact that I look here and I go, okay, well, how far is it from the midline to the maximum or the midline to the minimum? And you look there and you say, okay, well, from here to here, here to here, here to here, it's all the same. And it happens to be 2. So that's why we know our amplitude is 2. Then we look, how far is it way out to here to where we go 1 full pattern? And that it's either 2 pi or 360 right now because we haven't changed the periods. So we look and we go, oh, that's 360 degrees. Because that's how far it goes from max, 0, min, 0, max. That's how far it goes right there, 0, min, 0, 0, max. And so then I'm going to note the pattern. The fact that it starts at maximum, then goes to the 0, then the minimum, then the 0, then back to the maximum. The fact that it starts at the maximum, I know it's the cosine, because if it started at the 0 max, it would be the sine. So that's what we know. If we were to write this equation, we would simply use 2 as the A. The B is 1 because the period is 2. So leave the B alone right now. The midline would be that the D is equal to 3, and we know it's cosine. So it kind of writes itself, and we would write y equals amplitude of 2, cosine because of the pattern, x because the period hasn't altered at all. So the B is 1. And then we know we went up 3. So we write plus 3 because of this midline right here. And you're done. That's it. That's all you have to do. And yeah. Okay. So let's look at the next one. I'm going to clear this frame. And here's simply what the kinds of things that were asked on your homework last night. What's the amplitude? And I would like you to also be able to look at these and know what where the midline is going to be. So when you all right, so I'm just going to do it up here because this one is going slow. When you look here and you go, well, what's the amplitude? It's very simple. This right here gives us the amplitude because it's the A. But it does matter that it's negative. It means it's reflected over the midline. But the problem is that the amplitude is an absolute value. So the amplitude, is equal to just plain old 2, because it's really the absolute value of -2. This over here, this plus 3 tells us that the midline is at y equals 3. We know that it's a sine, so it goes 0 max, 0 min, 0, except because of this negative, it's going to reflect. We'll talk about this at the end of the video. Okay. I don't know why this one hasn't restored. Let's try this one again and see if it reboots better. Okay. Amplitude again. pause this video and you can pause and double check or just follow along. The amplitude is 10 and the midline will be at y equals -5. So let's see if I've got it here. Okay, I'm back to my other thing. So amplitude is equal to, sorry kids, I'm new to this tech. A equals 10 and the y vertical translation is equal to -5. And that's all they wanted you to do on those. So then based on the homework you had, so after this video, I hope you can go back and do the last 2 homework assignments. I know that I put the answer key there, but if you just copied it off the answer key, that's why you're confused. You got to fight for it. You got to fight to learn it. Okay. So the next thing is on number 3, you go, well, here's the maximum. Here's the minimum, right? So I'm here at 5 and I'm down here at -9. How far is it from 5 to -9? 14, right? What's halfway between 14? 7. So you have to count down or up. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or you can count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Regardless, whichever direction you count from, you find out that the midline is right there. And they want to know what's the amplitude. Well, the amplitude is the average. So the maximum is 5 minus -9 is the minimum divided by 2. So it's the average. 14 divided by 2, or in this case, the amplitude is equal to 7. It's right there. There's the 7 and there's the 7. Okay. All right. Okay, so these are the steps. You should pause the video and you should write these down. And then I'm going to go ahead and walk you through those. So pause, copy, and then I'm going to go ahead and do it because this video is going to be plenty long as it is already. Here we go. All right, so here's how you do this. You look at this, and for me, what I do is I go, okay, there's 3 things right off the bat that I can just put into, actually 4 things, and I just go straight from the equation into this information list. So I'm going to say the amplitude is 2 because the number in front of the X is 1, the period is, and then I look at the graph and say, am I in degrees or am I in radians? It's in degrees, so I'm at 360 degrees. The midline is right here at the D, and I'm going to go y equals 1. And because it's sine, I know that the pattern is 0, max, 0, min, 0. You kind of either need to memorize those or have a place where you can see them often. All right. So when I graph, the first thing I do when I have this information is I do the midline first. So I go to y equals 1 and I write in my midline, just like that. There it is. Then I say the amplitude is 2 and the pattern is sine. So I go 0, and then I'm going to go to the max. So I'm going to go up 2 because the amplitude is 2. Oh, so sorry. You don't just go to the very next number. You have to go to these 5 critical points, which are at 0, halfway, quarter way. They're like our quadrantal angles, right? I'm sorry. So we go 0, max at 90, back to 0, minimum 2 down. We go like 1, 2 at 270 and back up to 360. That's following this pattern. That's why we have it. It's because it's a sign that we start at 0 on the midline. And then we go max, 0 min, 0. And it keeps going forever, but we only want one period. So max, 0 max, 0 min, 0, and it goes on forever. And you're done. The critical piece I think that kids have trouble with is knowing that the zeros happen at the midline. The maximum and minimums are whatever the amplitude is from the midline. So if you start at your 0 on the midline, then you go to your max based on your amplitude, back to your midline, minimum based on your amplitude, back to your midline. Okay. Last one quickly, and you should write this down and put it in your journal or whatever you need, pause the video. What happens when the A value in the front of an equation is negative? Well, you kind of already know this, but you just haven't really applied it quite yet. So let me get you to do this. All right. So do you remember when we had when we had like parabolas and we did y equals x squared and we graphed the parabola? And then we said, well, what happens when we have negative x squared? And you said, oh, that's easy. It just opens down. So it looks like this. It kind of opens down. Basically, it reflects over that horizontal right there. Same thing here. Nothing else changes. It's just it flips, it rotates around the midline. Okay, so let's just fill in what we know. The amplitude is the absolute value of -4, which is 4. Okay, the negative matters. So I'm gonna say a 4 with a flip. Okay, that's what I mean. That flipped 4. I don't know how you want to word it. The period, because there's nothing in front of the x, the period, and I'm looking at the graph, is 2 pi. Sorry, which is a normal period. And the midline is y equals 3. Okay. So then I look at this cosine and I go, okay, so the cosine pattern starts at the max, goes to the 0 on the midline, min, 0, max. And now I'm going to graph, but there is one tricky spot. So I'm going to go to 3 and I'm going to put in the midline. Great. There's your midline. Okay. And I know that the amplitude is 0. And I know because of cosine, I'm supposed to start at the max, but I don't. Flag, alert. Here we go. This is a big alert. Okay. Because it is a negative, the max and mins trade places. The max and mins reflect. The zeros stay the zeros. Okay, so instead of starting out at the max, I'm going to start out at the minimum. Then I'm going to go to 0. Then I'm going to go to the maximum, 0, and end at the minimum. So this doesn't apply. Why? Because we have a negative. We have a negative A. All right, so let's just graph this thing. It's not that tricky. Here we go. So I know that it's 4. This is my midline right here, right? So I'm going to count down 4. 1, 2, 3. So here's my minimum. If there wasn't a negative, I'd start at the max. Then at pi over 2, I go to my 0. And then amplitude of 4, of course, we have to go off here, maximum, back to 0, and end at the minimum. And I'm going to put in a nice smooth curve. And there is the graph with an amplitude of 4. There's the amplitude of 4 there and there. A is equal to 4, because amplitude is always written as an absolute value, but the negative means we have to reflect it. And that's it. So that should be what you need for doing your homework. My next video I'm going to make you is how to adjust the period. Okay. I also am just going to open up. No, the graphing, the Desmos that we did the other day was just talking about what is the range when you basically right here, if you go back, if we look at something like this one, it just really wanted to talk about what's this range between the maximum and the minimum. So they were talking about a range for your Y values, and your Y values had to be, usually we said greater than or equal to whatever the minimum was. So we go down here, -1, and it had to be less than or equal to whatever the maximum was, which was 3. That's all that Desmos was having you really work on, is to find the max min range so that you could get the middle of it and find the amplitude. If that was confusing, let it go. You can still learn how to do it. Okay. So I don't know if there's anything else I needed to share at this time. So that is what I would have taught you on Monday and Tuesday. And hopefully you're able to do I think my numbering on the homeworks got off, but that was assignment 53 and 54 is how they're marked. I'll stamp everything when I return, but it's kids, you've got to be bigger than just copying the answers. You've got to try to get it and help each other. Okay, I'm going to make another video for today's lesson. Hopefully the guest teacher, Mr. Callahan, will be stopping and starting and playing this in front of the room, but I'm really not sure how that works. So I'll see you after a little bit. We'll start the next lesson, which means you need to open up another Jamboard. And now what we're going to learn about is how to slinky and change that period in addition to amplitude and vertical shift. Not that tricky, but I do need to kind of show it to you. Okay. See you guys. Bye-bye.